Good morning. I'm Sue Dinsdale, the Executive Director of Iowa Citizen Action Network, where we just celebrated 40 years of activism in Iowa, and we're so proud to lead the Tax March chapter here and host this event. So Tax March started as an actual march and is now a movement, a rallying cry, and a way of thinking. It's about fixing a fundamentally broken and rigged economy so that it works for all of us, not just the super rich and corporations. We all know the tax code is rigged in favor of the wealthy and corporations, so today most of us are standing up to say it's time to repeal the Trump tax. Repealing this disastrous law is the first step in undoing the harm it has caused to the economy and to families struggling to get by, let alone get ahead. Instead of tax breaks for corporate jets and tax cuts for inherited wealth, we need to ensure that everyone is paying their fair share. It's so clear that this law is squeezing every penny out of everyday working Americans. The GOP tax scam does not help working families make ends meet and is drastically increasing wealth inequality. We want an economy that works for all of us, not just the wealthy few. So we have some great speakers joining us here today to talk about the effects on everyday Iowans and Americans. First of all, we all know we need to improve education, and giving tax breaks takes funding away from our very future, the education of our children. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Earlywine. She's the Vice President of the Des Moines Education Association.
Thank you, Sue. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here this morning to talk with you all about this important issue. I'd like for you to take a minute to think about the ideal public school classroom. I imagine you're picturing a bright classroom where approximately 20 students are happily engaged in learning through lively discussion and appropriately challenging activities. All students have everything they need to be successful: paper, pencils, adequate technology, and a certified licensed teacher to guide student learning. While you would not be incorrect in your vision, this is a very common classroom environment in our public schools. I would challenge you to consider what structures must be in place to create this environment and what it truly means for all students to have everything they need to be successful. As an educator, I know there is more to this phrase than it seems. There's so much more to learning than simply having your books, pencils, and paper. Students are entering our classrooms homeless, hungry, anxious, and traumatized, and we fail to see and recognize the necessary resources in our schools that help students become engaged learners in the classroom. The school counselor, who provides students and educators with support and strategies to help students work through challenges so they can learn. The librarian or media specialist, who assisted the teacher in locating engaging resources for his lesson. The reasonable class size, which allows the reasonable class size, which allows the teacher to check in on the learning of each student. The ELL teacher, who works with both students and other educators to help provide help to the English language learners in the classroom. The school psychologist, who provides in-school appointment times to students so they can return to the classroom sooner, and the school-wide breakfast and snack program so students can focus on learning instead of worrying about where their next meal will come from. These are just a few of the supports necessary to help our students stay successful. Public schools are often the first to feel the heavy consequences of tax cuts provided to the wealthy, and these resources are what students lose. Students like Jonathan lose access to his one-on-one paraprofessional, so he now has to stay in the self-contained classroom instead of traveling to different classes with his peers. Caitlin loses her weekly appointment with the school psychologist, where she learns coping strategies for her social anxiety. Ben doesn't graduate because he was unaware that he was 2 credits short since he couldn't meet with his counselor due to the high student to counselor ratio. And David fails 7th period language arts because he can't focus, and the school nurse now has to service 2 schools, so she's not available after 11 a.m. to give him his meds. These tax cuts cause cuts to the public school funding, and as a result, the public school is transformed from a place where a child can focus on learning and gaining skills to yet another place where they have to put their needs on the back burner without the necessary skills to do so. When we give tax breaks to the rich, we stop investing in our students. We tell our students we don't care about their future. It's time to stop widening the gap, stop making the rich richer using tax cuts, and start investing in our students and public schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So next up, we have J.D. Schulten, who recently was the director of Working Hero Iowa, promoting the Earned Income Tax Credit to assist low-income Iowans. J.D. knows that hard work and community are what Iowa is all about, and he's committed to living those values. J.D.
Thank you. Like Sue mentioned, my name is J.D. Schulten, and I ran for Congress up in Iowa's 4th District last cycle. And though we didn't win, we moved the needle 24 points, which was the 3rd most in the nation. Thank you. We did a town hall in all 39 counties, and I started each one off with this same stat, that the average person in Congress is 58 years old with a net worth of $1 million. Well, I was different. I was 20 years younger and about $1 million shy of that average. And one of the reasons why I ran for Congress is because there weren't Democrats like my heroes anymore, the Paul Wellstones, the Tom Harkins, and the Berkeley Bedells. And last cycle, we got to see one of Berkeley Bedel's 1982 re-election posters that said, "The 1% controls our government. Does the 99% have a chance? How can we rescue our democracy?" Berkeley Bedell has some ideas about that. And 40 years later, we're still asking that same question. And about the same time, in the early 1980s, when Bedell warned us about the 1% controlling our government, there was a gentleman named Dan Smith who started at a pork plant in Storm Lake, Iowa. He joined a union, had a decent benefits, and started off at $16 an hour. Well, the pork plant in the 1980s deunionized, and 37 years later, when Mr. Smith retired, was still making $16 an hour. Where I'm from, wages are stagnant, and they've been so for about 4 decades now. And so when pundits on TV and folks out in Washington say that our economy is doing great and the stock market is doing well, I ask, for whom? Because I don't have stocks. And when I moved home a couple years ago, I looked in my hometown paper, the Sioux City Journal, for a job. And the best job I could find was $15 an hour with no benefits. And in 2017, when the Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, they could have passed anything they wanted to. An infrastructure program or project that would help modernize America, improve health care, improve our public education, or help lower drug costs. But what did they do? What is their one main achievement? It was a tax bill that allowed the rich to get richer. The tax bill, a year and a half later, clearly benefits the 1% and the corporations while leaving the working class behind. A bill that made it easier to ship jobs overseas. Our number one problem in America is, as it relates to our economy, is that America hasn't found an answer to globalization as it affects the working class. Corporations and the 1% are doing well while the working class gets left behind. And this is exactly what we're seeing in Iowa's 4th District. We're the 2nd most agriculture producing district in America. And right now, Smithfield owns 1 in 4 hogs in Iowa. And Smithfield's owned by China Pork. And China Pork's CEO in 2017 made $291 million. $291 million. That's more than Elon Musk and Apple's Tim Cook. Meanwhile, the majority of pork producers in my neck of the woods are handcuffed by contracts where they got to buy from here and sell from here, and they're lucky if they're able to make a profit. And this year we have a whole lot of soybean farmers up there who don't know where their market's going to be this year. Meanwhile, we have multinational corporations like Cargill that are going to sell their soybeans to China, whether they come from Iowa or they go down to South America to get those soybeans. And according to the USDA, the median income for a farmer in 2018 is negative $1,500. This matters where I'm from. To add this tax bill on top of these things, that's all right, it accelerates income inequality. And this is how messed up things are. In 2018, the election cycle to the 2020 election cycle, the maximum donation an individual can give to a federal campaign has gone up from $2,700 to $2,800. That campaign contribution adjusts with inflation. However, for the last decade, the minimum wage has been stagnant at $7.25 an hour. And to put that in perspective, 1 hour's labor is about the price of peanut butter and jelly sandwich if you buy a loaf of bread from Hy-Vee, peanut butter from Walmart, or jelly at Dollar General. We live in a time where 40% of Americans can't handle a $400 out-of-pocket expense, and nearly every gas station where I'm from has a donation box for someone who just got sick or someone who just got in an accident to help pay medical expenses. And 1 in 3 GoFundMe sites are set up to help pay for medical expenses. All the while, 60 of our Fortune 500 companies didn't pay a dime in taxes. Currently, if you have money, if your corporation has money, or if your lobbyist has money, this government is working for you. It is time we bring back a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. My name is J.D. Schulten. Thank you very much, and I continue to stand tall for all.
Thank you, J.D. Workers are the economy, plain and simple. If workers aren't doing well, the economy isn't doing well. Our next speaker advocates for working Iowans every single day. Let's welcome Ken Sager, President of the Iowa Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO.
Thank you, Sue. A lot of our members are concerned about what's going to happen. They think the system is rigged, and they're right. Citizens United gave basically a blank check to people who have lots of money to buy our government, and it's working. Our members think the deck is stacked, and they're right. It's stacked by corporate lobbyists. It's stacked by wealthy people like the Koch brothers giving lots of money. You may ask, what does this have to do with taxes? Well, the people in the government, the folks who make the laws, are the ones who establish the tax rates. We just saw a nearly $2 trillion tax cut go through, the majority of which went to the top 1% into corporations. We have needs in this state and in this country that are not currently being met. We have a federal deficit, the likes of which no one has ever seen. What we need to do is fund our government in order to meet the legitimate needs of working Iowans and working Americans. Our infrastructure is failing, our 20th century infrastructure is failing, and we haven't even begun to address the 21st century infrastructure. The people in this state are concerned about our small communities and our rural areas, and they have a right to be concerned, because those folks out there aren't just competing with Indiana anymore, they're competing with India. We need a 21st century infrastructure in place like broadband so our people can stay in these small communities and compete and have the opportunity to enjoy the style of life they are accustomed to, and to have an opportunity to have jobs so that the next generation can stay in rural Iowa. And we're not doing that because we're more interested in giving money back to those who already have money. It's a sad situation that when we measure our economy by how well the wealthy are doing, that has to stop. We need to make every effort to make sure that working Iowans, working Americans have the opportunity to succeed in this country. And that means changing the nature of our government to a government that responds to the needs of its citizens. And that cannot happen whether it's in education, infrastructure, or any other aspect of our life without the appropriate resources to do that. When asked why he robbed banks, John Dillinger said that's where the money is. When people ask you why we should tax the rich, I think the answer is that's where the money is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. So our last speaker is my friend and colleague, Matt Sinovic, Director of Progress Iowa. Now, Matt's not just my friend, he's a friend to every Iowan. He works nonstop on issues, whether it's Medicaid, fair courts, health care, the list goes on and on. Matt?
Okay. Thanks, Sue. Well, thank you, Sue, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. My name is Matt Sinovic. I'm the Executive Director of Progress Iowa. It's my privilege to be here today, standing with Sarah, Ken, JD, Sue, and all of you doing this important work. And we, as Sue mentioned, we do this kind of work regularly because what we are living through right now is not the Iowa and the America that we believe in. The people that we talk to and the families that we work with know that they want the best schools in the nation and when they send their kids there, they want them to have a meaningful interaction with their teachers so that they can learn. But in order to do that, we have to hire more teachers and pay them like the professionals that they are, instead of underfunding our schools. The America and the Iowa that we believe in means that people can go see a doctor without the fear of going bankrupt. But in order to do that, we need to make real investments in our healthcare system and fund it, instead of trying to strip away protections for people with pre-existing conditions and overturning the Affordable Care Act. The Iowa and the America we believe in means, as Ken said, quality infrastructure, roads, bridges. Iowa has some of the worst bridges in the country. But in order to create jobs and give people safe infrastructure so that they can do their business and go to work every day, we need to have adequate investment. We need to raise taxes on the rich. What this tax bill has done is pretty stark, and we believe that this is a fundamental shift in how our government and how our economy has been structured. We've been seeing this over the last several decades, but the Trump tax put so much money in the 1%, and right here in Iowa, it did the exact same thing. The top 1% got the lion's share of that tax cut. And meanwhile, 1 in 4 Iowans, that's 25%, 1 out of 4 Iowans will eventually see their taxes go up as a result of this plan. Think about that. This was supposed to be a tax cut, but the average everyday working families in this state are actually going to see a tax hike because President Trump and the Republicans in Congress want to give all that money away to the 1%. That is not right. That is not the Iowa we believe in. That is not the America that we believe in. So it's no wonder when you see the president tweet about something scandalous, something racist. This is what they're trying to distract us from. They're trying to divide us when we should be absolutely united and standing up for working families in this state and in this country. And it's also no wonder that poll after poll after poll shows that the Trump tax plan is incredibly unpopular. It is unbelievable to me that how unpopular this bill is and what kind of political moment we are seeing in this country. Because a few years ago, a decade ago, if you had told us that you could campaign against a tax cut, I think we all would have shook our heads and wondered what you were talking about. But that we have made the argument. People are mobilizing on this issue. People are organizing around this issue. Things like this bus tour that are going across the country, educating voters about what this tax cut for the rich actually means for working families is so critically important, because we have to share this message. We have to educate people about what is actually going on and the issues and the bills that impact their pocketbook, because otherwise they're going to keep distracting us, trying to divide us, and meanwhile, while we're not looking, taking all that money that we're paying, our taxes will be going up, and they're sending it all to the 1%, to their billionaire buddies, the Koch brothers, like Ken talked about, who can donate to their campaigns. We have one recent example of this where Senator Joni Ernst, the FEC reports just came out, Senator Joni Ernst is getting thousands and thousands of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry. And they know, and other corporations and millionaires and billionaires know, that Senator Ernst has their back. But that is not what Iowans want out of their senator. That's not what Iowans want out of their government. So I want to thank everyone again for being here today and urge you to stay focused. Stay focused on what matters to working families and what matters to our pocketbooks. And together we can continue this fight and work to tax the rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So what we know is raising taxes on the rich, actually just having them pay their fair share, is the best way to ensure a fair playing field. We need to fund and improve education. We need to work on our infrastructure, make health care accessible, honor our workers, commit to our Iowa values, and so much more. It's crazy to think that tonight the millionaires and billionaires will sleep soundly, knowing that their money's just going to keep piling up, while the rest of us are losing sleep trying to figure out how to make ends meet. Tax the rich. It's just that simple. Thank you, and on to Indianola, where we're actually going to soak the rich guy in our dunk tank.